Today is December the 8th, 2015. My name is Tanya Fincham, and this is Alex Bishop. We're with Oklahoma State University, and today we are in Edmond, Oklahoma, to visit with Stella Carroll, right? Stella Carroll.
Yes.
And this is part of our Oklahoma 100-Year Life. So thank you for having us.
You're welcome.
Let's begin by having you tell us when and where you were born.
I was born in Seward, Oklahoma, Oklahoma County, and September the 18th, 1913.
So you're 102,
Yes, ma'am.
a spring chicken.
Well, when I get old, I'll look back and remember this.
There you go. What did your father do for a living?
He was a boss on the railroad, Santa Fe Railroad. At that time it was called Santa Fe. I forget what it is now. And he had worked there since he was young. And we lived in a company house, and he had a large gang of men working there. Then he heard about Central State, that's what it was called back then. And he thought that would be good for kids' education. And so he transferred from the Santa Fe over to some people call it trolley, but that wasn't what the Oklahoma Railway, I believe that's what it was called. It was short from Guthrie to El Reno. And of course it went down to Norman, Brooklyn City's short way. It wasn't a big like the Santa Fe. And we moved to Edmond Land, and that's when I was 5 years old when we moved to Edmond. We lived a year, I believe it was around a year from when we moved from Seward. We moved to Britain, and of course he was still working for Santa Fe when we did that. And that's when he heard about Central State. No, of course he had heard about it before, but it hadn't registered with him. So and since then, I've lived in Edmond.
Well, how many brothers and sisters did you have?
I had 4 brothers and 2 sisters. There were 7 of us.
And where were you?
I was, I had 3 brothers and 1 sister older than me. Then a brother and a sister younger than me.
So almost in the middle.
Pardon me?
Almost in the middle. About in the middle.
Yes, ma'am.
Where did you go to school?
Well, now, a lot of people haven't heard of this, but I started in the kindergarten up at Old North Tower. And I went through the 6th grade. No, wait a minute. I started the 6th grade down in the public school. I believe it was. I can't remember whether I went through the 6th grade up there or went to the 6th grade. But a lot of people had never heard the Old North Tower had a grade school. And I've had sometimes when somebody had asked me where I started school, and I'd tell them, and they'd say, well, that's a college. So I don't know when they changed over or what they have up there now, but I do know I went there to the first grades in my schooling. And then Papa bought property on, well, Papa and Mama, on West Herd here in Edmond, and we moved just a block north of here and a block east, or well, just over the tracks, between the tracks, and so that's when we changed schools.
And how many grades did you finish?
I went to high school.
Graduated from high school?
And I started business school and got married and quit. Since then, I haven't been smart.
What year did you graduate from high school?
1932.
And from Edmond, or
Yes, ma'am.
it was just Edmond High School?
Yes, ma'am.
There's so many now, I don't know.
Well, at the old high school up on Boulevard, so
Okay.
it's about a block or so north of here on Boulevard.
Did you have a favorite subject?
Did I have
A favorite subject?
a famous subject?
Uh-huh.
Well, I kind of liked them all.
Wow.
I was just an average student. I wasn't smart, but they had the average subjects, and I had two favorite, but I can't think of their names. I know the principal was one of my teachers, and everybody liked him because he pulled jokes all the time. But I had a teacher in grade school. Yes, wait a minute. Hines, Hines, I believe it is. She was she was in middle age, but she was so nice and kind to everybody. And then I can't think of the principal's name now, but he was quite a character. And if we went on a trip every day, some kind of not every day, but the days we went on the trips, why, he was a lot of fun with everybody. And I always enjoyed him. Of course, after we had been in school and him being the principal about 2 years, we found out he was a personal friend of my little uncle on my father's side. Well, Mama didn't know where her family was. Her parents passed away when she was young, and every time I'd make a mistake in school, he'd blurt out right in front of everybody, "I'm going to tell your uncle on you." And I got tired of it, and I told him one day, I said, "You go ahead and tell Uncle Milton. He will laugh at you." But that's the kind of teacher he was. He wasn't. He taught. Now you had to know the lesson, and you had to bring your written lessons back in. So I think between that school and my father, I really learned discipline. My father was the best father in the world. He lived for Mama and my kids. I was just it. And any time we said, "Ask what we're going to do this weekend or so," he would ask us what we'd want to do. And if he thought it was to our good, that's what we did. So I said I was not a parent like that. I tried to be, but I just didn't have the knowledge to follow in how my father did.
Well, how would he discipline?
You did it. No meant no. And he never whipped us. I never got a whipping in my life. But some of the rest of them did, but I didn't. But it was, my father didn't believe in whipping so much unless you did something that he thought was terrible. And my mother, she'd raise her finger, "I'm going to tell your father on you." So we'd tighten up. But no, my father was no, and you're grounded for so long or so much, and it was good to be that way. I never realized until I had a child that was what you're supposed to do.
Well, was he from Oklahoma?
No, ma'am. He was from Kansas. And his mother and father lived up at Burr Oak, BURROAK, that's Kansas, and that's up on the Republican River, our district. And the largest place that I have knowledge of being close is Smith Center. But we used to go up there practically every year to see his mother. His father passed away when we were little, and Grandma had a store, and the post office is in the store, and It was just an old-fashioned town.
Neat.
Yes, and everybody knew. When everybody knew came in, it's I don't know how they had to explain it, but everybody knew everything that everybody else did. And
No,
it wasn't a big town.
were they farmers?
No, ma'am.
Oh no, she worked in the store.
My father met my mother. My mother was an orphan, and she had, she wasn't for sure if the people that they put her with, they were Catholics, and Mama was a Catholic. And they were named Tillman. And they were farmers, I guess, because Papa was working there one summer and with a crew that moved from one farm to the other. And that's where they met. So I'm not for sure. Mama just didn't know too much about her family and her life. She had a brother, and when her parents passed away, they were separated. And we never could find out. Of course, like Mama said, whoever adopted Frank would change his name. So we didn't know who to look for, but we always would, when we find out there was a Frank around, about what age Mama, I don't remember if she was the oldest or not. But she sure wanted to find her brother, but never did. So I don't understand when they separate them like that, why they just cut them off.
Now that was probably close to the Depression time too, or well, no, that would have been earlier.
And Papa told her, said they probably don't want him to have anything to do with the family. And if he didn't know any more about his family than Mama did, he was a very lonely man. Because Mama, she didn't know much, and she had always tell us to be sure and always remember the family. And of course, we always did. Our brothers, the three older boys, were, my sister was older than me, and then there was a boy older than her, and I believe there was 7 years between them. So they were growing up fast when we were just coming along small. And Mama would always tell us, love your brothers and sisters. I did, well, we all did. Some of them weren't too much on showing it. Now, the boys would fight alone for we girls, but they'd fight each other.
Well, did they go into the war, any of your brothers?
Pardon me?
Did your brothers go to the war?
Go to work.
Military?
I had two. My brother, the second boy, went, and my younger brother was a prisoner of war, and he thought he was in England, but he wasn't for sure. They wouldn't tell him where they were. And when he came home, he was a jolly good kid. He'd do anything for anybody. When he came home, he had a fiery temper, and he just wouldn't kind of, he kind of shoved us back. He'd visit and everything, and he had lost so much weight that he just looked like his skin was stretched over bones. And of course that was German and I forget, Russian prisoners what he was.
World War II. Yeah. In World War II?
Yes. Yeah. And my older brother was in the Navy, and he wasn't ever hurt in the war. He came home doing pretty good.
Did your husband have to serve?
No, ma'am. We were farmers, and farmers were, they weren't necessarily eliminated, but they would not take them if they didn't need to because of growing of food.
Mm-hmm.
And I know one time he said not restrictions, but they had, well, I'll say rules, I can't think of the word, that they kind of would keep us under. And like we couldn't raise this when we could raise something else to help the food quantity. And I didn't understand it, but Ernest did, so that was what was necessary. But we weren't big farmers. We had 160 acres one place and 320 another, and so many out around. We lived out around Dare Creek, and so many out there had thousands of acres. They just pasture cattle on that, and we had quite a nice herd. We sold our milk to Enid Goldspot. So
you had dairy cattle?
Yes, ma'am. Most of them were the black and white ones.
Jerseys?
Yeah.
No?
No, Guernsey was kind of like jerseys. Holsteins. It takes me a while to get my memories working.
You're doing good. How many did you have?
Well, on milking, we had about 30 daily, but we had quite a few with calves with them, and some not milking yet, or they were, and of course Ernest was always going to a sale and buying a young group, and I'm not for sure just how many we had just at any one certain time, but he'd try to buy 5 or 6 at one time. And
Well, did you have to help milk?
well, I tried. We didn't have any milkers at that time, and that is electric milker. And I was so slow, and Ernest had to finish up for me, so he never did ask me again if I wanted to go milk. I said I found out how to keep from going. I didn't mind it, but I went out there and I said, now, where do you want me to start at? And he told me the cow, and I got the stool and sat there, and I knew what I was supposed to do. And I was trying to milk faster, but my hands just wouldn't do it. And he said, you want to be careful with that cow because she's stepping a bucket of milk when you're through. Well, I was watching her pretty close, and she tried to kick me. And I said, you know who this cow kicked? Oh, yeah, she's kind of mad about that. And I said, well, why'd you give her to me? I said, because I knew that you weren't harsh with pulling on her milk or anything, and I didn't think she'd do that. So we had 2 or 3 that was bad about that. Some were worse than that one, but she was the prettiest little thing. But I said, I'm not going to milk her anymore. But you can have fun when you're working. The other guy gets the fun.
Well, we should back up. When did you get married?
When did we get married?
Yeah.
In 1939.
So after the Depression?
Yes, ma'am. You learn to make $1 be $2. But on the farm, you've got all your milk, butter, eggs, if you have chickens, and we had a bunch of chickens, and your meat, so you're not going hungry. And that is a big item out of your grocery bill. And we butchered, we had hogs too. Oh, I hated those smelly things. We butchered 1 pig and a cow at least once a year, and sometimes twice a year. And so we were never out of meat or anything. And I made my own butter. I made my own cottage cheese. So you learn how to do things like that. And the deal of it, it wasn't too bad doing it. And then when we got electric milkers, why, Ernest added a few cows, and we always had good cream and good milk.
Make homemade ice cream?
Well, not often. We, if we went down, that's one thing we did. If anybody wanted ice cream, of course, we only had one son, and he always wanted an ice cream cone. He never wanted a dish, it was an ice cream cone. And so we'd always buy his, and if we wanted, we always had enough money for what we wanted like that. But you never thought about being poor, and we weren't poor, but we weren't rich either. But we had a good, happy life. That's one thing. My husband never raised his voice, and he never scolded. He'd just say something in kind of a quick voice, and you know he wasn't happy about it. And he and I had a good, happy life. And of course he was crazy about the boy, and Billy was, we have two Billies in the family, and you think that isn't a mix-up. When we first we moved to town, we lived in a house on the corner. My husband's brother and his wife built that house, and I'd say something about Billy, and they'd say, which one? And of course Billy was named after his father, and then people got, they both were growing up, and Billy Jr., that's the one you met, was going to school here, and he would get telephone calls. Well, so did the father. I had to go through the system, which one are you calling for? And then I had to tell them where that one was. And 3/4 of the men would say, well, where's Billy? And I said I would never name a kid Junior. But it runs into confusion a lot. And about, I started out, and about half the time I'd direct somewhere Billy Jr. was instead of the father. So, but
Well,
I don't know.
when did you move from the farm to town?
In 1970.
Oh, a long time ago.
But the only reason we did, the family we were renting from, their son wanted it. And we didn't have one in view. So we started looking around. Ernest decided we'd just try to buy one, and he got the bank loan and government loan for us, and we thought it wouldn't be bad trying to find. Then every farm we would go see, and I got so tired of going. I knew the farmers were getting tired of us too. They would, the government, no, that farmer's too much. yet they're the one giving us a loan. And we went out as far as Crescent, and we went east quite a ways. We saw some beautiful places, and most of them cost less than what they did right here. And I could never understand that. And then Ernest got sick. He had emphysema, and when he went to the hospital, he went into a coma right then. And so I just stayed there and paid rent. But my brother-in-law and sister-in-law didn't want us to pay anything. And I said, yeah, I got a job out at Frontier City in the Indian Trading Post. And I liked it because I was out among the people and all. But I managed to keep my bills paid and pay my rent and all. And I thought, well, I was doing pretty good. And then Ernest never came out of the coma. He just passed away. And so I didn't have anyone to help advise me, and I felt lost. But I learned, and I told Bob and Mary Lou, I said, they talked about selling, and I said, I want to buy this house. And Bob didn't want to sell it. It was a good mark-off for him. He was working for an oil company, and Mary Lou was a teacher, so they were making fairly good money. And he thought they just had one boy too, and they thought that was their tax write-off. And then when Bob passed away, Mary Lou, I had already remarried. Mr. Carroll and I were good friends because he and his wife built this place. The son built it. He had a company, a building company, and we were neighbors. And he came over one night and said, why don't you move in with me and you won't have to pay rent? I said, oh, no, I'm not. And he looked at me and I said, no. And he said, well, we could get married. We were not married, we were good friends. And we did go through the ceremony, but I wouldn't marry any man. I told him, I said, my husband is the only one I ever loved. And I said, I like you as a friend. He said, well, that's the way I am about you. And he would talk about his wife, and I'd talk about Ernest. And the neighbors for a long time thought we were crazy. But
How old were you the second time around?
I was passed away in 1971, and I was a widow a little over 5 years.
So,
and we got
76.
married in 1976, so I
76.
can't figure out what year that
63.
just off the head.
What was Ernest's last name?
Hanson,
Hansen.
H-S-O-N.
Oh, yeah, Hanson.
And one year was Hanson. We were Hanson. A lot of people couldn't think about that. When I say Hanson, they'd say, "You mean Hanson?" No, I mean Hanson.
S-O-N.
Mm-hmm. And his folks were farmers. And of course, he grew up that way, and that's why he wanted to be a farmer.
Well, living back on the farm with your brothers and sisters, did you have to share a room, a bedroom, with your brothers and sisters?
I did, but, well, see,
They were older, yeah.
we lived in Edmond. We didn't live on the farm then. It was when we lived on the farm, it was Ernest and I, and then Billy, my son. And we always had a big house, a two-story house, and I hated that because going up the stairs, trying to keep the upstairs clean and all that wasn't any fun.
Did it have electricity?
Yes, ma'am.
Indoor plumbing?
We didn't have it when we were first married, but the place we lived in, a widow woman owned it, and she thought my husband was part angel. And she asked him one day if she put electricity in, if we would pay a little more on the rent. And Ernest said, well, yes, because I'd like to have milk, or he'd like to have different things, that would help him. And she said, do you know a good electrician? And Ernest said, yes, me. When we were first married, he had worked under an electrician, and his boss told me in front of a group, they own the Paz hardware store here, that Ernest was one of the best electricians they'd ever had. And he was just an apprentice. And he was still working there when we got married, and we lived out east of Edmond. He worked here in Edmond. And he asked me one day, he said, would you be happy on the farm? And I said, well, I've never lived on a farm, but my friends had been farmers. I had one of the greatest friends that lived up by Seward. They were farmers. And he said, well, I think I'm going back to the farm. So I've got he had a small herd at his folks' farm. So I said, well, do you think just a small herd would keep us going? I said, I can keep my work, but I think driving, if you have to drive too far, I know it won't because of the expense. And he said, yes, but I want you to quit working because on the farm you have plenty of work. So I quit work and we moved to the farm. Everything just worked out beautifully. I think it's because we set our mind to it. If he hadn't known enough about it, I knew a little bit about farm because every summer I'd go up there to Seward and stay a while with those people. And then the daughter would come down and spend it here in town. But I never thought much about the work, but we always called that woman a man, aunt and uncle. They weren't any kin, but my dad would not let us call him by first name, and he didn't like the name of Mrs. and Mr. when they were such close friends. So Aunt Anna said one day, well, just call me Aunt Anna. And man's name was Cleve. And you can call him Uncle Cleve. And Papa said, that's fine. Said, if you want your children to call us Aunt and Uncle. And that's the way it was. And they were friends. Let's see, I was 4 months old, Mama said, when they met Cleveland and Anna. And they were friends the rest of their life. They'd come to our house just like you'd go to your aunt and uncle. You'd help, you'd do whatever was necessary, and it was a good family deal.
You adopted each other.
Pardon me?
You adopted each other.
Well, I guess we did, because I'll tell you, when we lost them, it was worse than losing my own aunt and uncle. But my own aunt was the type that, well, we went to visit her one Sunday, and whenever we'd go visit Aunt and Uncle Cleve, we dropped in. We dropped in on Aunt Bessie and Uncle Milton. And she very plainly, in front of the whole group, said, Will, I want you to always call me and ask if you can come. We never went back. My father, and that was, Papa had 2 sisters, and that was, he was the only boy. And it was just kind of a bolt of lightning when she said it. And you know, brothers and sisters, they drop in on each other. We always did. And we never thought much about it. But that was the way Papa's family was. When he went to visit his mother, he had to write and tell her that he was coming, and then wait on her response. And on Mom and Papa's we had people dropping in all the time. Papa would always celebrate the 4th of July. They used to have big doings at Stevens Park. That's the one on 5th, isn't it? And the whole town and country would practically be there. And Papa would go to the ice house, which was right over here on First Street, and if he knew how many was coming, he'd get a 5-gallon of ice cream. And if he wasn't for sure, he'd get 10 gallons. Those great big, it was a wooden, looked like a wooden bottom of a ice cream freezer. And they'd pack it well for him and everything. And Mom and we girls would spend days cooking, baking and all. And we'd all go down to the park after lunch, then come back and eat supper, and then people would go home. And it was wonderful. But I don't know, none of Papa's family ever came. But we'd have different families from around here. We had a family out on Deer Creek that the girl and I were friends. I met her the day she first started high school there, when she was, I believe we were juniors. We were in the same grade, and her name was Clara, and her family would just, they didn't ask if they'd come, they'd just drop in, and that's the way my folks were. We've had people drop in at a meal that we weren't expecting anyone, but Mom always had plenty for the extra one. And I never could get ready for anyone when they'd say they were inviting. Of course, the folks invited anyone, they were welcome. And that's what people lived back then. It wasn't, I don't know how they do now. Of course, I have people in family that drops in. I don't pay attention to them. If I'm not cooking and I don't cook anymore, they have to fix their meal.
Well, how important was church back in your growing up?
Church?
Mm-hmm.
The First Christian Church here at Edmond.
Did you attend church? Did your family go to church on a regular basis? Or how important was it?
I was 9 years old when I joined. And my father never did join the Christian church. He was raised a Methodist, but he went to the Christian church. And Mama was Catholic, but she changed over to being a Protestant because Papa wanted her to. And Papa never had anything against the Catholic, but back then there were some terrible stories about them, so Papa just told her he thought for the children he'd like for her to join. And Mama still was partially in her mind and heart a Catholic when she died. we never thought much about it, and we didn't think it was awful for her to feel that way. Some people did, and some of the women made some sarcastic things about it until she joined the church. But she joined before any of the kids did. But my sister and I, older sister and I, joined at the same time.
Do you still attend church today?
Pardon me?
Do you still go to church today?
I would like to. I have a friend that she used to take me to church, but I don't feel like I should get in a crowd with my walker, and I'm afraid that if I got in a crowd, I might fall or something. So I read my Bible, and this book, I don't know whether it's a reference book. My nephew gave me that when I was 100 years old. And I read that, and I read the Bible. I pray. I won't pray in public because I don't think I know how well enough. But and my belief is to live right and love a fellow man. So I think that I'm doing the best I can now.
You said you like to read. Do you read anything else?
What?
Do you read any other type of material? Do you read books or?
Oh yes, but just put it there. I read. That's inspiration. It's in
A romance.
there's the Bible verses are worked in that. And I've read those books. I don't know how many since I got out of the hospital back in 2011. My neighbor over here has them, and she called me one day after I got out of the hospital, and she wanted to know if I read. And I said, yes, I do. I read a lot like that in the hospital. And I told her yes, and she said, well, can you go and buy them? I said, well, Billy will take me. Well, she said, don't do that, Stella. Said, I've got worlds of books here, and she must have. Every time Billy goes takes the books back, she sends about 2 or 3 dozen at one time. And I read those. It takes me about 3 weeks to read that.
That's pretty
That's
good.
pretty good.
When I was reading in the hospital, I didn't have any roommate until at the last. And I was reading one day, and some people came in and talked to my roommate. The man said, Stella, how many of you read today? I said, well, I haven't finished this. And he says, we talk about you reading, but what else would you do? I said, I can't do anything here at the hospital, so I just read. And even here at home, if I sit down, I pick up my book. I don't like to just sit, and I don't like TV. The only things I watch is Wheel of Fortune and Price is Right and the news and weather. And someone said, don't you watch the afternoon?
Soap operas?
Yes. I said, no. I got, oh boy, I had two neighbors on the farm that watched them. And if they went to town, they'd stop in, ask me to watch them for them. And finally I told them, I said, why don't you get a
VCR
uh-huh.
recorder?
And I said, I've got one and you can borrow it. I said, well, they had it, but they didn't want to miss any of their program. So I'd watch it, and every day for 3 or 4 days, it'd be the same thing. And I told them one day, I said, how can you feel like you're seeing that when you're looking at the same thing? But I just couldn't imagine anyone enjoying something like that, but they did, so that was fun. But I didn't enjoy it.
Well, did you sew? Did you sew? Did you sew? Make clothes and stuff?
Yes, I embroidered and I sewed, patched, but I don't try it now. I have a machine. It's quite old, but it's a Singer. It still works good, but I asked Billy to open it up and we'd just leave it open. And he won't do it. He says, Grandma, you might run a needle in your finger. Oh, I've done that. And I told him, I said, I've done that, hon. All I do is just take it out and put some medicine on it, peroxide most generally. And, but he said, no, said, let's not do that. Said, you don't know just exactly what to do. Blood poisoning could set in or something. And I said, I don't think so, but he doesn't do it.
Well, did you ever think you would make it to 100?
No, ma'am. Most of my family passed away in their 80s, and I firmly thought I would too. And when I kept getting another birthday, it was kind of a surprise, but it isn't anymore. When I was 100, my children's mother, she was my daughter-in-law, and my granddaughter had me a party. Well, Lois has a beautiful home down at Yukon, and that house is half again bigger than this. And it seemed like to me it was people in every room, and I didn't even get to talk to half of them. There were so many. And I enjoyed the party and everything. Well, along comes my 101 birthday. And Brenda asked me when I won my party. I said, we had a party last year. Let's not have one. And same with 102. They thought that was awful. But I don't see to have a party every year. And it was all on Lois to straighten up, to get things ready for the party, and then to straighten up. And at that time, her husband was in bad health. And since then, he's passed away. And I couldn't see for Lois. And even if Brenda stayed up and helped her, that'd still be a lot of work for two people. But they said they'd want me to have a party, and I said, well, let's wait a few years. So I don't know when it's coming.
105.
I'd rather, if I lived that long, I'd rather work. I wait about 5 years, and they could have their party then. But I don't know, so many people, I didn't know we had that many friends still living.
What do you contribute your longevity to? What's your secret to longevity?
You know, I don't know. The only thing I know, I never drank. Now, wait a minute. I tried it once, and I tried smoking once, and didn't like either one. But I never drank or smoked. I don't even know that would hurt you. Because I'm sure there are others lived longer, and they have drank and smoked, but I don't know. I have nothing against it if that's what they want to do. But
Do you eat pretty much what you want?
yes, I drink a lot of pop and tea and coffee. I'm a coffee drinker. And I keep my water there. So I really don't know why me and why not some of my other family. And most all my family and friends are gone. And I lost 3 friends around last Christmas. And two sister-in-laws. So, you know, if I knew, I'd probably live a little differently. But I feel like maybe it's because I worked out, I worked here, I've kept active. Maybe that's it. I don't know. The good Lord knows, and that's the only one I can tell you it has.
Well, what time do you usually get up in the mornings?
All the way from 4 o'clock to 6:30. That's right. I been getting up about 4 o'clock some days. I don't know why. I just wake up, so I get up.
And what do you do that early?
I eat my breakfast and read my Bible, and then I start my housework. And of course, I watch The Price is Right from 10 to 11, so that takes up an hour of the morning. And it takes me most all day to do what I want to around the house because I'm terribly slow now. And I don't have any time scheduled anymore.
Well, do you take a nap?
Well, if I sit down, and I never used to do this, I might fall asleep for a few minutes or 30 minutes, and then I'm ready to go again.
And what time would you go to bed at night?
Oh, all the way from 10:30 till 1 o'clock,
Wow.
just when I get sleepy. But I believe that's because I've heard this, that elderly people don't need as much sleep as they used to. And I'm judging by my schedule. That I used to go to bed about 10:30 and get up about 6:30. Just
Got your 8 hours?
pardon me.
You got your 8 hours? 8 hours of sleep?
And I sleep good. You'd think with that, me going to bed like that, that I would wake up or maybe be tired or something, but I'm not.
Well, do you have anything on your bucket list you want to do?
Pardon
Do
me?
you have anything on your bucket list you want to do? Something or something you'd like to do and never done before?
No. I'm a homebody. I can't think of anything unless it would be something around here. And I just don't know.
When did you give up driving?
When I was 93 years old. I remember that. This lady next door didn't drive. And for years she had gone with me to the grocery store. And so she needed to go that day, and I said, well, I'll take you. I was still working. And no, I had quit working when I was 86, I think it was, somewhere along there. And I told her, I said, well, we'll go just as soon as I get cleaned up. I won't go anywhere if I'm not clean. And so we went up to Dollar General, that's where she wanted to go, in Walmart. And we came out of that shopping center up here coming out south. And I got just about in the middle of that road. It's a double one going through there. And Jane said, "Oh, Stella." And I looked up, I had looked up, sat there on the north side for a while and looked both ways to be sure there wasn't any traffic. So I looked up and there was I don't know whether it's a woman, man, child, what, just barreling at me from the east. And I said, "Well, hold tight, Jane," and I backed in real quick. I looked in my mirror and saw that there wasn't anyone parked there. And if I had been a minute or two later, that car would have just plowed right into us. And I sat there a minute or two and then it was clear, so I started up. I said, "Jane, I believe it's the last time I'm going to drive." And she said, "Well, if that's what you want to do." And I said, "Yes, I don't want to go through something like that again." And I knew my reflexes were not what they should be. Mm-hmm. And I called Billy and I asked him if he would take Jane and I grocery shopping when we needed it or go or what, or if he'd buy my groceries, whatever. And he said, "Grandma, whatever you want, I'll do." So Jane said, "Well, she just have Doris," that's her sister, lives across the street on the corner there, "have Doris to pick up her things because Doris works at CVS, yeah." Mm-hmm. And she ran the grocery stores, different ones, and she could pick things up out of the store she worked at anyway. And so that's the way we worked it. Sometimes they'd pick mine up, sometimes we'd pick hers up. But then I fell. That stopped me from going.
That's why you were in the hospital?
Mm-hmm.
Was you fell?
I broke my hip and it was a long siege. They put a pin in first and it started slipping. Everybody practically does. And so they went back in the same scar and put the whole new hip in. When the first operation was over, I was walking as good as I always did. And then that started, and this is the way it left me. And I told I didn't tell him, Billy told the doctor, one of my legs was longer than the other. And I was walking, you see the elderly people, mm-hmm. I believe that's what's wrong. And the doctor told Billy, says, "We'll check it." Said, "We'll take care of it." Well, I don't walk that way, but one of my legs is just a little bit shorter. My right one. And my feet are not the same size. So I told the doctor, and he says, well, do you want another operation? I said, good heavens, no. That's what it would be, you know. And so I told him, I said, I'll put up with it unless it gets worse. But I couldn't get, went through rehab up there, and I couldn't get my strength back. And that's my problem now. I asked the doctor, I said, doctor, when they know they've got to put a complete hip in, why don't they do that at first and don't put that silly pin in? They showed me a x-ray where it showed that slipping and how and all. And he said, well, that's the way it's supposed to be. And I said, no, it's not. I said, you're going by what the doctors say. And I said, 3/4 of people that I've talked to have had the same problem I've had. And that's the reason you find so many elderly people can't do much. And it's not fair to them. I said, what you need to do, put that in. It won't be any harder on them right from the first than it was the second. And he said, well, we know that. If they know it, it's not fair to the people.
You tell them.
And I told the doctor, I said, if you want me to, I'll tell other doctors that. But I can't have anything like
That's good.
Get a little more light.
it. Just made it, yeah, I've got a bright light in here.
Yeah, it helps. It's better.
But I'm not a doctor, I'm not a nurse, but I have sense enough to know what I need. But I have a specialist that I go to for my hip, but I go to a medical doctor here and so. And most doctors, the doctor and his assistant are just wonderful. The sister hugs all the women. And I told Dr. Ponder, I said, you don't get to hug the women. He's quicker than you are.
Well, what advice would you give someone who wants to live 100 years?
Pardon me?
What advice would you give someone who wants to live 100 years?
I don't give advice. You know, if a person asks me, I don't know. I just know that the good Lord has made me live this long. And He might make them, but I don't know how to tell anyone.
Sure.
I never thought I would. I didn't have any wishes for it. I'm glad I did, so I'm with my family. But if I'd tell somebody how to live, that's wrong. everybody knows what they should or shouldn't do. And I believe that that is a good thing for them.
Well, if history were written today, what would you want it to say about you? How would you want to be remembered?
I'm scared they'd say that's that old woman. Really, I don't know. I hope they say I had a good life and that I was a good friend, but that's about all I know. You know, I never thought, it used to bother me if a person talked about me. But after I got older, I don't think about people talking about me. And I don't believe that too many pay much attention to me. Of course, I don't go to, I used to belong to lodges and clubs, and I found out there's a lot of gossip in both, and I don't believe in that. So it's fine if a person wants to, if they can live with themselves. But it bothers me to talk against anyone. And I've gotten to where I used to vote, never missed, but I don't anymore. And I've been asked, who you gonna vote for? I tell them all of them. That's all I know. If I was asked, really, right now, I'd have to say I don't know who's running. I know some of them, but I mean, I know of some of them, but I don't know who I'd vote for, and I just hope the best person wins.
Do you remember voting for the first time?
That I voted?
Uh-huh.
Yes. And I thought it was the greatest thing when I changed 18 that I could vote. Yes, I don't remember. Oh, yes. I remember Roosevelt. I voted for him. And I always felt like he was a good candidate. I don't know whether he really was. I didn't know much about the candidates ahead of him. So I don't know how they did or anything. My father was a good person of voting. And of course, Mama followed what my father did. But I don't know whether I voted right or wrong.
What, did you vote the way your father did?
Did I? What?
Did you vote the way your father did?
Not always. joined the Democrats because Papa and Mama were. But sometimes I would cross over. But now I wouldn't follow anyone.
Did you vote for Henry Bellman?
For who?
Henry Bellman? Does that name sound familiar?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, Republican.
Yes, I thought he was a good person. And I can't remember all the ones I voted for, but in the last, 10 years, I'd say, I haven't paid much attention to them. But I know there are good people out there, but there's also some that's not so good.
Yeah. Well,
But I'd like to see somebody good get in and straighten a few things up.
maybe you should run.
Boy, would I straighten them up. No, you know, everybody has their own opinion. And sometimes it's good and sometimes it's not. And I just don't know how I would vote. I saw you look at my pictures. My sister-in-law painted that. And the one with the little fisherman, one of my friends, they're both hand-painted. That's painted by a left-handed man.
It's very nice.
And he worked out there Frontier City. Well, he didn't. He had a store. That's why I should work it. And I went to work one day, and my boss lady said, Stella, well, anyway, I can't remember his name. His wife worked with us. Anyway, he told me that he wanted me to come over to the store. And I said, well, I'll go there after work. But I said, what does he need? I couldn't figure out because his wife was over there working with us. And his wife's name was Merle. And Merle said, oh, Stella, just go find out. And I said, I'll go pretty soon. She said, no, go now. And he had that on an eagle, and it wasn't quite finished. And he showed it to me, and he, do you like it? And I said, well, yes, I'm not very smart with artwork like that. And he said, well, that's yours, and says, I'll let you know when I finish it. And I was the only one that he did that for. And it made me kind of proud, and yet I thought there were others that would like to have one of these pictures. In fact, I wish mine had been more outdoors, where it was flowers and trees and all that. But I wouldn't have told that man that for nothing. He had done all that work, and he stretched it, put it in a frame. So I'm happy with it.
You were special.
I guess, but I just couldn't figure out what I'd done. The only thing I know, when we came to work, we came past a store, his store first. And I would knock on the door window and holler at him, have a good day, or whatever, you know. And that's the only thing I ever did. I didn't stop and talk with him, only of an evening going home. And I didn't know what brought it on, but that might have done it. I'm not for sure. But I did that for 2 or 3 others. We were really the only older one there. There was a candy store there and 2 bachelors. And I'd knock on their window. I'm trying to break in. That's what I'd always tell them. And they'd always have something to say back to me. But they were really nice too. And I said we had such a good group out there. It was kind of like a family that's always lived together, and you pull jokes on them and everything. That store that I worked at was wonderful. The bosses, I never saw my boss nor heard him raise his voice. If he was going to scold somebody, he called them back to the office and talked to them. And then if it didn't stop, he just let them go. And I said, that was a kind of boss I
Similar to your father.
pardon me?
Similar to your father. A lot like your father.
Pardon me?
He was a lot like your father.
Oh, yes. My father, boy, it didn't take him long to straighten you out. You knew when he said no. There was no way you could change his mind. Now, Mama, you could wrap her around your finger. She was very easy. But I don't know. I never thought much about it. I knew that you should mind your father and mother. They knew best. And that's the way we grew up.
Well, they did a very good job with you.
Well, thank you.
And I think we'll stop for now.
They, well, they didn't, and neither one of them yelled at us, you know. We had a neighbor. You could hear them. Of course, we lived over there on Herd, and the neighbor on the west was they had a daughter that was adopted, and she would yell at that girl. And so he wouldn't really yell, but he raised his voice. And it was hard to take. But Papa would just, if he came in the kitchen and he had something he didn't like that you had done or said, he'd stop you right in your tracks and tell you about it. And it was best. I said, when people would hit their kids and all, I think it made it harder on the person. But Papa did have to whip the boys a few times to straighten them out.
I think we'll close off right now, okay? We'll finish.
Surely.
Thank you.